I want to say a big thank you to everyone that watched my video last week. It's currently on 114 views, so thank you so much. So this week I'm doing a jewellery tutorial for you, and it's on wire bracelets, so I hope you enjoy. So this is the bracelet that I made myself, and it was just for myself. I had no intention of selling it or anything. It was just so I could wear it with bracelets like this and just to be able to stack them up, and it just adds a nice little addition of colour. So I'm going to show you how to make your own version, but I've got different piles of crystals. Here I've got an autumnal pile of mixed pearls and crystals, and here we have loads of different crystals that I plan to be using, some charms, some jump rings and some lobster clasps. So the first one I'm going to do is my autumnal bracelet. I've chosen loads of different pearls, loads of different crystals, but you can choose any beads you like, but this is what I've just gone for. I plan to be using Beadalon, which is the wire I use for doing bracelets. The great thing about Beadalon is you've got yourself a needle, so you can thread through the holes and makes the process a lot easier. I personally prefer it when a bracelet is more random, there isn't really a pattern to what you're doing, you're just threading the beads on. I also really recommend getting one of these mats. It's just so handy because the beads don't roll around and they stay where you want them to. I've also included one completely random bead to the others because I think it makes it more interesting if all the beads have some kind of variation, which is the nice thing about pearls because they all look different. So I'm just going to keep threading. I haven't got a specific size that I'm going for with this bracelet. So I don't think it's quite at the right size yet, so I'm going to keep going for a bit longer. Okay, right, so what I'm going to do is measure the length of this bracelet just to get a rough idea of what I'm looking at. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to measure from the first bead to the last bead and not include the clasps or the extra wire. Bear in mind the fact that I don't have a lot to go, so I'm going to include these beads as some last minute additions with a crystal to finish, because I think it's nice to have the same bead from start to finish. But I'm just going to cut enough off the edge there so I've got room to play with. I'm going to need some crimps. Now there are different types of crimps you can use. There are more rounded ones like these, or you could go for a tube. I personally prefer to use a round one. So what you do is on one end thread the crimp on, like so. Choose a clasp. I'm going to go for a heart lobster clasp. Then you thread the wire through the hole of the lobster clasp, and then you need to thread your wire back through the crimp. Then what you need there's a little wired loop at the top here, and you want to leave that a nice gap because you don't want it to be too tight. At this point, you hold your wire like this, grab some flat nose pliers, and you just squeeze the crimp. Make sure your lobster clasp is out of the way first, and squeeze the crimp like so, so you know that it's not going anywhere. You will then grab your cutters and cut the wire not too close to the crimp, like so. Then you have one end finished. Then we switch over to the other side. This bit is a little bit more fiddly because you need to keep this quite tight. So yet again, we're threading the crimp on. This time we're going to be using a closed jump ring. That is what will connect the two ends of the bracelet together. And you just thread that onto the wire, back through the crimp, and pull. Now this time, when you go to finish it off, you need to make sure you pull your crimp down. It's good to have a little gap for a bit of movement in your bracelet because otherwise it can become quite stiff. And yet again, you don't want to leave too much of a gap at the top, but just enough. So I'd say about here was right. You grab your flat nose pliers again, and you just crimp, and then you get your cutters again and go close to the crimp and cut. Now at the end of a bracelet, I mean this is fine, you can leave it like so, but if you want to make it a bit more interesting, I would suggest adding a charm to the end of your bracelet to make it a bit more personalised. So I'm going to take an open jump ring this time with a charm. For a jump ring, use your flat nose pliers to hold one side of the jump ring. You will then need your round nose pliers on the other side and pull back with your pliers so you have an open jump ring. At this point, pop your charm onto the jump ring and then decide where you're going to attach this to. I'm going to attach this to this bit of wire because then it's not in the way of the jump ring or the clasp when you go to do it up. So then to close the jump ring, you put your round nose pliers back on the other side and just bring it forwards instead. What I tend to do when I close the jump ring is go like that a couple of times. So then you have a nice charm on your bracelet. Okay, so these are the end results. So obviously I've got my autumnal one here, which is slightly more chunky with a charm on the end with a heart lobster clasp. Here we have a more dainty one, and as you can see, the same as this, the design is quite random, but I think that makes it more fun. And it also has a just for you charm on it with a normal lobster clasp. Also, I've made a completely random one again with blues and pinks, slightly smaller than these ones. It has a heart lobster clasp and a jump ring without a charm because it was quite a fussy bracelet, so I didn't feel it needed it. And then obviously you could go for a much more simplistic style like the one that I made for myself. The lovely thing about bracelets like these is you can stack them, you can make as many as you like, they're great presents, you can add your own little charm to make them more personal, and I just think they're really easy to wear and lovely to have. So thank you very much for watching my video, please like and subscribe, and I shall see you next week. Bye!